we literally just walk in, crack a beer, and we just go for it. And it's all about the riff. And I think that's like so important because Obituary is about the riff.
So I'm here with the snare smashing demon that is Donald Tardy of Obituary. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. We're back in Florida, just got off the US tour, and we made it home. I would say alive in one piece, but in shattered pieces.
Ready for a Christmas break, right?
Yeah, we are. That was a 29 date tour, 6 weeks away from home. So yeah, we got beat up a little bit, but it was a fantastic run. So we're happy to be home.
Oh, that's amazing. Was that the Amon Amarth leg with cattle decapitation and everything?
Yeah, and Carcass. Yeah, it was
Oh, wow.
just a dream tour, man. Such good people. Amon's crew and that whole band just really treated everybody super humane and well and like family. And Carcass is one of my favorite bands on the planet, so that was a treat.
Absolutely, man. So I'll dive straight into Dying of Everything. So what was the writing process like for the record, if you don't mind sort of, bringing us
Yeah,
down?
yeah. I mean, I think everybody knows that Obituary is not the band to put an album out every year or every other year. So we take our time with writing riffs, coming up with the ideas. Anytime there's a new idea, we usually record it quickly, tuck it away, throw it in your back pocket till later. And we did that throughout a couple of years. And then when we got off the Slayer tour in Europe, which is pre-pandemic, we were hellbound determined to make it home, to get cracking on the new album. And we had a United States tour to go do, and then the pandemic hit. And we had no idea, just like the rest of the world. We were like, I don't know, are we going to go home for a couple months and then jump right back out? And the next thing you know, it's a year and a half. So the writing process, I don't like to use the word a blessing, but it definitely was one of those things that we were home and indefinitely home. So we the songs we already had written, we tucked those away. We continued writing. We looked back at the songs that we were finished with, and knowing that we had time to critique them, tweak them, and really just take our time, making sure that they're the best songs, and the best song that we could call complete. We have our own studio, so a very calm, very casual recording process, which is everything to a musician. There's nothing worse than being pressured and putting the pressure on yourself because of timing or money at a studio. And the luxury of having our studio really made this recording process and writing process just a fantastic time. And I could not be more proud of the new album. I cannot wait to get it into the hands of the fans.
It's awesome, man. Absolutely fantastic record. So is that Redneck Studios that you're talking about?
It is. It
Yeah.
is, and it's my brother's house. We've had the house for 25 years now. We've done uh we've done the recordings all the way back from Executioner's Return. So probably five or six releases now we have been recording there at the studio.
Oh, wow. But I hear you renovated. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did. It was time to renovate and upgrade the Pro Tools rig, because we had that rig for about 15 years. And in computer terms, that's a dinosaur if a computer is over 12 years old. So it was time to upgrade. But then when the pandemic hit, we learned what a live stream was, and we were a part. We educated ourselves. We were a part of 2 weekends of a live stream at another studio, and we realized, man, we need to do this on our own. And so we dumped some money into the video editing software, and then we upgraded our Pro Tools rig all at the same time, and just got race ready, and had some fantastic times with some of the live streams,
Mhm.
and the feedback from the fans was awesome. Uh, and so, yes, the studio is upgraded. It is firing at all cylinders right now, and we're excited. And the new album shows. The new album, I think, personally, I think it came out awesome with the production and just the feel of the whole album.
You know, those live streams of Slowly We Rock, Cause of Death kind of informed this album a little bit. Like, was that kind of something that happened there, or?
Yeah, it's funny because we didn't think about that, but that is a good question, and it did bring up the idea that a lot of the album was what some of the album was already written, but we did take the time to do those live streams, and when we announced it, we were like, we're gonna do, first weekend's gonna be all of Slowly We Rot, and then we're gonna play the entire Cause of Death. And when we announced it, we looked at each other and we're like, holy shit, did we just commit to learning all those 30-year-old songs that some of them we've never even performed before, barely. And so we had to dive in. We had to open the books and do our homework and relearn some really old riffs and some song arrangements as 20-year-olds. What the hell were we thinking? So yeah, I really do think it tapped into an old vein of our teenage years. It gave us that, it got the juices flowing of some of the song styles and some of the writing styles that we had back then. And I do think it helped with this new album to really just bring every style of Obituary on this album. We have crazy fast, we have super slow, and then we have those meat and potatoes of the mid-tempo, really groovy stuff that came later in our career. So again, I could not be more excited about this new album.
Absolutely. But, equally, I think there's also breaking new ground on this record as well.
Yeah, and I think that's staying relevant as a band. I think that's learning as a student. I like to think, and I tend to think that we get better with every attempt. Every time we write a song, every time we write an album, every time we enter the studio and hit the record button, hopefully you do get better. It would be a shame to not to think that you're not getting better with time and experience. And this album is a perfect example of that. I think the band is very fully rounded right now with Terry and Ken in the band, and we're just having a really good time right now in life, in writing music and recording albums. And the combination of the band playing their instruments well, and then handing the files off when we're done recording it, handing those files off to Joe Sincata, our engineer, who's done the last two albums at his studio up in New York City at Full Force Studio. He's just a king of making fat sounding killer productions. And he did it with us on the 10,000 Ways to Die release, and then mainly the self-titled album, last one, and then now this new one. And I really do think the chemistry's there, and we're really working well as a team. Joe's our live guy. He's our live sound engineer for the last 15 years. And anyone who's seen Obituary live, they're just like, how in the fuck do you guys sound so good live? Yeah. And Joe's a big part of that. He's mastered his skills, and he brings it to the studio now too. And he's really good at what he does.
That was literally what I was about to say, because it sounds like you're in the kind of like jam space with you guys, but also, in a live setting, essentially, even though it's probably very meticulous, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that studio is meticulous, and studio can be very, very cut apart, trimmed to pieces, fixed up, tucked in, and the main thing we knew going into on this album was that we are a good band live, and my drum kit does sound good by itself. So my request to Joe, my demand to Joe was just keep it as live as you can. I love my snare drum sound. I love my drums. I love the sound of the drums in the room. Don't sound replace everything. Let's keep it as live as possible, because that's what Obituary is. And he took that, and he kept it as live as he possibly could, but he also then obviously worked his magic and worked his skills and just made a very well-rounded album.
Absolutely, man. So if you could sort of tell me what some of the themes around the album are based on.
Yeah, it's really cool that we've been a band for 33 and more years, and we still have the desire to make the best song you can possibly make,
Mhm.
to really put in the work to make sure that the song is complete. And then the passion, there's nothing, and I've said it many times, there's nothing more fun a human being can do than what I do. If you love drums as much as I do, to be able to get behind a drum kit and practice and play, I don't care if there's nobody in the studio with me or if there's 6,000 people in the crowd watching me. It is the most fun I can possibly have is getting behind a drum kit. So the passion is still there to really just want to play my drums well and get better and practice and be more solid every song that I write. And so going into this album, it's a really cool feeling after 30 years of writing and being behind a drum kit that now I can step away from the drum kit and be the songwriter that I know I am. So if Trevor has a riff and we think we wrote a song and we take a quick look back at it, I'm usually the one to really just open my mouth and say, "Oh man, this song's killer." But imagine, right before that second verse, if there's a bridge or if there's something cool that we can do that just makes it something, or after that solo part, before we do the obvious, which is go into that last verse, why don't we try something this? And that's what we did on this album because A, we had time with the pandemic, and B, it's maybe looked past on some of the records. And so, it's a luxury we have again because we have the studio and we're not being pressed with time. We're not being pressured with the amount of money you're spending per hour. So it allowed us to, again, make these songs as good of a song as we could possibly make them. And that was the focus. That was the focus. Obituary is not reinventing the wheel. We are not the most technical band in the world. We know this, but we are good songwriters, especially as a team. And we wrote some solid songs on this that I cannot wait for the fans to hear.
Absolutely, man. I think you really hit the nail on the head there about sort of the use of dynamics and how important that is at, getting that right moment to make you go like, whoa.
Yeah. It's funny. Again, Obituary is we're cavemen of metal. We've said it before. We are not technical. We are not doing a million rhythms in one song, but it's a really fun process to hear the beginning of a song. Like Trevor's riff, some of them are the most elementary riff you could possibly write on guitar. And it was really cool watching Ken. He's been a part of the writing process now for 2 albums because he's the new guy, even though it's been 11 years that he's going on in the band. But it's funny because Trevor and I have been doing this for 30 years, and we know that we are a basic band, and a basic band starts with very basic beginnings of songs. And I remember his facial expression, like listening to Trevor's riff, and he's just kind of like, and I'm like, Kenny, what's going on? He's like, I just don't see I don't see what you guys are going to do with this song. It's like, it's so, he wants to say boring, but he's like, it's so basic. Yeah. And I'm like, just give it time, man. A loaf of bread starts with flour and water, but then you add a little butter and an egg, and you let that shit ferment. And then the next thing you know, it's a delicious piece of bread. and so it was cool watching him watch us take some of the most basic riffs and them become some of the most catchy, groovy Obituary songs. For example, the song War on the new album, the song My Will to Live. I remember Ken just going, okay, that's basic. Yep, that's real basic. That's super basic. That's very, very basic. But then when it's done and you've got it in your hands and you're listening to the album, he's the first one to go, I just can't believe how these songs turned out. I can't believe it. So that was really cool having Ken, the new guy, sit through the process, because Ken wrote 2 songs on this album with me, and his approach and my approach with him was a lot different than me and Trevor. Trevor and I are extremely calm, cool, and collected. There is no pressure. It's a fun process. It's basic. We don't put the pressure on ourselves, meaning if we enter the studio that day, we're entering the studio with an open mind and a positive attitude. But if nothing happens that day, big deal. There's always tomorrow. With Ken, he's so determined. He's so nervous about Obituary fans wanting. He wants them to like his song. He knows it needs to sound like an Obituary song. So it was cool. The opposites, with Trevor, writing with Trevor and myself, and Kenny and myself. Ken's approach was much different and was very work. He was working on them and working on them and working on them, and it shows because his two songs, which is the title track, "Dying of Everything," and the song "Torn Apart," those are Ken's two songs. And if you listen to them, Obituary fans will definitely be able to say, "Yeah, I know, I can tell that's not a Trevor song," but we did our best to try and make them as Obituary-ish as we can.
Of course, but it's it speaks, I think, to the songwriting of the band that you can see this amount of flower and then see what it will actually amount to at the start of a simple riff.
Yeah, and we're not the band to write things down on paper. Like a guitar player does not show up with I had this riff, and then I have the B riff of that, and then there's a bridge that goes back into the A riff of that. And can we write a song around it? Or my brother saying, "Here's a page full of lyrics. Let's write a song around that." We're not those dudes, man. We literally just walk in, crack a beer, and we just go for it. And it's all about the riff. And I think that's like so important because Obituary is about the riff and the head nodding and that groove that we want. Not about John's lyrics or the story that he's going to write. It's about the riff, and that's essential when it comes to Obituary and the song, the approach that we take when it comes to writing an album.
So, in terms of lyrics and stuff, do they kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a better word than take a backseat, but kind of, is it sort of like not quite the main focus, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's never been the main focus, and everyone that knows Obituary from the get-go, my brother has never been the lyricist of all time. In fact, John tells the story that we were just kids, and Trevor and I were jamming, and we had no singer. So John said, until you guys find a singer, I'll sing. And then he says, apparently they've never found their singer yet. But just like I explained before, like any musician, especially my brother and myself, I tend to believe, and I do truly believe, that JT gets better every time he approaches a song. Every album that he does, Lord knows, Solar Rot, he was going for it. He was just doing whatever was necessary as a 20-year-old non-lyricist. He was just going for it, and he was using his voice to really set the mood. Mm-hmm. And he still does that. It's not about the lyric. It's about his approach with his voice. And of course, he's gotten way, way, way better as a songwriter, as a lyricist. And especially on this new album, I'm super proud of his lyrics on this album. But he'll be the first to say that it's not necessarily the words, it's how they come out of my mouth. And it is the epitome of what Obituary is. Yeah, it's about John's voice, not John's words, and his voice speaks volumes. And again, especially on this record, he's just getting better and better as age creeps up on him. I don't know how he's as powerful as he is right now at the age of 53, going on 54, and his range right now is just immaculate. And his voice on this album is very powerful.
Absolutely. I mean, he's, one of the best death metal singers in the game. So the fact that you're saying, he's the vocalist still hasn't turned up. Something that is as kind of integral to something as lyrics, and his voice is almost seen as like another instrument, really, like another kind of riff.
Yeah. And it's, we've always approached it that way. He always, and I can speak for him because I've done many interviews with him, and I've seen all his interviews, and he'll be the first to say that he literally just tries to, whatever Trevor is doing on guitar or whatever drum beat that I'm throwing over the top of that riff, John just tries to fit that scene, put the mood, whatever his voice is telling him to do to fit that song and make it an Obituary song. And this album, it's the same thing. I remember writing some of these songs, and we weren't 5 minutes into the riff with me and Trevor writing something. And I saw my brother over there writing on his pad and paper. And 2 days later, he's still with that same idea. And he's like, I don't know why, but the minute you guys wrote that riff, I wrote down immediately, beware, be warned. And that's the last song on the album, Be Warned. And he said, I wrote it 5 minutes into you guys playing that first riff. He said, I just kept saying, be warned. And it stuck. And his voice is so brutal on that song. You don't even need words. It's so basic. It's so brutal. And the same thing with the song War. He did the same thing. I remember him writing it, and he goes, I don't know why. I have no idea why I just said war, and I'll take you to war. But he goes, it's stuck. It's sticking in my brain, and it's really what I feel about this. And again, that's one of my favorite songs on the album. It's absolutely brutal. Mm-hmm. And both those songs came out really cool.
Yeah, man, for sure. So I'll move slightly here, but I believe I might get his name wrong, but is it Mariusz Lewandowski?
Yeah, Mario. It's a very tough name to announce, but Maurizio, maybe.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The Polish artist. I mean, everybody knows that has followed us that our German artist Andreas Marshall has done majority of Obituary album covers. He was unavailable at the time that we needed to start looking into art. So what are we going to do besides look at art around the world? And Maurizio's art just grabbed my attention. It's different than anything Obituary has ever done. Way more mystical and colorful and beautiful. And I think that has to do with the oil paint. We've never used an oil painting. And so we asked the record label to approach him and reach out. And surprisingly, and we were delighted to get a reply from him that says that he's available. He knows Obituary. He's very familiar with Obituary. And he is absolutely ecstatic that we asked for his assistance. Oh, and wow. that was really cool for me. So I immediately got into conversations with him through email and asked him what he wants from us, because I've learned over the years with artists, whether it's an artist painting or an artist guitar player, is less is more sometimes, especially when they're brilliant artists. So I asked him, I said, we want to give you our input, but we don't want to flood you with information because we are hiring you for how brilliant you are. And so he just simply said, yes, I want your ideas, but I also want the album to find me, is kind of what he told me. He said, if I could please, he said, how about some song titles, maybe some of John's lyrics if he has it. And then he asked for a copy of the album. And I was like, yeah, man, that's killer. And he said, I want the songs to really enter my brain and allow them to tell me what's going on here. And that was really cool. And he did that, and he got the copy of the album. And as he was listening to it, a couple weeks went by, and that's when my brother and myself came across what we knew now was going to be the name of the album. And when I emailed him one more time, I said, we're planning on naming the album Dying of Everything. He replied to me and he said, brilliant. He said, this gives me so many ideas, and I think I have a direction now that I want to go. And when someone with that much talent tells you that, I didn't even hesitate. I said, go for it. We trust you. We love what you do. And we are confident that you're going to bring us what we want. And sure enough, he delivered a masterpiece. Like, I'm so privileged and honored to call that thing an Obituary album cover. And then the sad thing, the news is that we know that he passed away shortly after finishing our artwork. And never got to talk to him over the telephone. Sadly, we were really hoping to meet him in person, but at the very least, he worked with us through the whole process of the album. He even picked what part of the artwork with us that he thought was going to be the album cover, which we agreed to, and we listened to his advice. And then the most important thing is he knew how ecstatic the band was and how thrilled we were with the artwork that he gave us, and how proud we were that we were going to call his art the next Obituary album cover. So at the very least, that was super, super important, I think, for us and probably for him.
Absolutely. I think, it's also slightly colder that I felt, where I was kind of like, the Obituary haven't had that sort of cold feeling for a while.
Yeah, which is a funny description because it's full of lava and
Yeah.
brutal, a brutal hallway of molten death, whatever's going on there, and cliffs of burning bodies with their steam going over the top of it. So to use the word cold, which is a great description, it just again goes to show the magic hands and brain that guy had. I mean, it's unbelievable. The colors that he used, there's where you get the word. It's much more cold and mystical,
Yeah.
but there's so much flame and debris and burning bodies and burning hallways and cliffs of steam that it is by far the most heated, steamy, evil artwork we've ever had.
So I wanted to ask, as a, being a drummer, like, does that sort of affect your songwriting? When do you kind of have the rhythm more in mind when you come to sort of like put a song together? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I'm not afraid to say, and my band would back me when it says I have a big mouth. I have my brain works a million miles an hour. I sometimes speak too quickly for my other band members. My brother and I are very much similar, but we are also very polar opposite when it comes to certain things.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so I always say, the what is the saying? You give me an inch, I take it a mile. And I think that's the magic of Obituary, because Trevor is a very basic caveman writing guitar riffing crazy man.
Yeah.
He's very basic. He works on one thing at a time. There's not much multitasking going on.
Mhm.
I'm the complete opposite. I could be thinking of 3 and 4 songs at a time while discussing it with my band members and holding down business emails about backdrops and artwork design and everything else, because I kind of got my hands in on everything. But yes, as the drummer, and I don't want to say the main songwriter, because I'm not. Trevor obviously is a big part of it, and so is my brother. But I am the one that can overwhelm the rest of my band with my ideas. So I take that, and I simply just make sure that I'm getting my point across. Even if I spoke too quickly the first 2 or 3 times I expressed myself for a certain song, I make sure that I slow down enough to get my point across, because it's an important point if I'm bringing it up for a song. And everybody knows that Obituary is not writing the most technical songs in the world. We are not reinventing the wheel of metal. We know this, but together we are writing some really good songs right now, and that's a group effort. I am not the best drummer in the world. Trevor is not the greatest guitar player in the world, but combined together, we are writing some really killer, basic death metal, groovy songs that Obituary fans are wanting, they're expecting, and they're getting on this album. So I'm really proud of that.
Equally, though, I think, you mentioned about that you're not necessarily the best or anything like that, but Obituary sound is so iconic. Like, the second you hear one riff, you're like, oh, that's an Obituary song.
Yeah, and maybe that is maybe the key to what I just said. Maybe that is the key. It's basic. It's memorable. It's my brother's even used the word, it's easy listening. Because some albums, I mean, let's face it, some albums are not easy listening. You're not just gonna you're not I'm not gonna put on a Psychroptic album and then just casually like do laundry or sweep my floors. When I put on a Psychroptic, it's like I got to be prepared, and I listen to it from front to end, and my jaw is on the ground half the time, because I'm just like, what the fuck are these guys doing, man? Like, what what kind of weed are you smoking to come up with riffs like this? And why would you want to play drums so fast, you know, compared to Obituary shit? You know, mine's like John Bonham, Led Zeppelin meets Vinny Appice's Ronnie James Dio, because that's in my DNA, and that's the solid basic drumming that I love and I want to be like. So,
Absolutely.
you know, I'm proud to be the caveman of metal when it comes to drumming on this heavy metal planet that we're on.
So, so after your years in death metal in the genre, how do you feel about the genre currently?
I think it's more relevant than ever. That United States tour that we just got off is a proven factor that the pandemic did not stop anything. Decades of working hard is proving itself. Death metal, heavy metal is big right now, very big. Death metal fans and metal fans, they're so in touch with their bands they love. They're so smart. They are so adapt compared to other genres that it's a big family. Metal family, the metal community is a big one, and fans are a big part of that. They're smart. They know their riffs. They know the bands that they love, and they worship it. And that's everything to us, man. That's why we do what we do. That's why we go out and we do 200 shows a year and try to get to every corner of the planet, and we bust our asses because they deserve it. You know, if fans that are in New Zealand, fans that are in Japan, you don't see them often enough. So when we go there, they show up, and they are diehards.
Absolutely, man. So finally, what does Dying of Everything as a record mean to you?
I just think it's the epitome of what Obituary's been working on for 3 decades, man, which is be comfortable in your skin, be confident at what you do with your instrument. You might not be the most technical musician with your instrument, but believe in the team that you're on. And the Obituary team is a family. We are a solid package, especially with Terry and Ken in the band now. And just play what you believe your fans are going to love. And how do you do that? You write a song that you love. And that's all we did. We just wrote riffs that we were happy with and that we were excited about. And on this new album, you could put every song title on a dartboard, close your eyes and throw a dart. Whatever song it hits, I would be happy to play that for the fans off this new album, because every song is a solid song on this record, in my opinion. And I'm so excited and can't wait, man. I cannot wait. I can't believe it's only a few weeks away for the fans to get it in their hands. And January 13th, they're going to finally get them. You know, we've been waiting 2 years. We sat on this album for 2 years until the pandemic opened and Europe and UK were open so we can get over there. And we're finally on our way.
Oh man, I can't wait. I'll be first in line at the Electric Ballroom.
23rd of February. It's a Thursday night. So we're going to have a good time on a Thursday night.
Sweet, man. We'll rage together.
Awesome, man. Yeah, definitely. Come find us, man. Let's have a cold beer. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
the last date of the tour, so got to celebrate.
Awesome, man. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat and everything. I know you're a very busy fella, so I really appreciate
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you. That was a great interview for me, and I cannot wait for the fans to get their hands on this new album. So fantastic.